Can you see? Share. Can I just share the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
You might want to plug in first
Yeah,
to
well,
see
yeah.
like what you're sharing. Sometimes it's...
I just selected the app.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's good. Oh, we can go whatever button. I love my new Mac with the touch bar and all that fun stuff. So, all right. So that should work, and you all are going to see that for a second. All right. Slideshow. I typically do these in Tableau. And by the way, there's a fantastic article written by another Tableau user group leader, Nelson Davis. Can you see it?
No.
No? It says I'm sharing. Oh, sharing is paused. Why? Bring your shared window to the front. Oh, it must be. You were right. Always listen to Brittany. Okay. All right. Desktop to.
There we go.
Forward. All right. Nelson Davis on his blog has why you should do your next PowerPoint in Tableau. So I highly recommend doing that, though I was not as ambitious to do one in Tableau tonight, though you can do it for sure. All right, so the topic of my conversation tonight, or my talk, is called Shepherd or Sherpa, when to lead and when to carry. So this is for all of you that are either maybe you're leading a team of Tableau developers, maybe you are the only Tableau developer in your business unit or even in your company, and you wanna grow your organization. So this talk is really all about where I've come from and how I think centers of excellence should operate. So I'm not going to get too heavy into what a center of excellence is. So I'll give you a definition toward the end. But there's just a really good opportunity for you to kind of see how to grow people with Tableau skills. But also I think there's a lot of kind of cross functionality for every kind of everyday how you interact with people, how do you teach people, how do you learn, how do you help people grow in whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's Tableau, whether it's data, whether it's in managing people. So hopefully this will have some impact across whatever you do. And there we go. All right, let's make sure that works. Okay, so who am I? So as Brittany said, I am Christopher Scott. Again, there's my Twitter handle again at CGScottDBA. Stands for Data Visualization Architect. In this community, we like to steal like an artist. So we do give credit where credit's due. A good friend of mine and fellow co-leader of our Raleigh-Durham Tableau user group leader, Ken Patton, actually came up with that title. And so I stole it, and it's actually how I got one of my jobs, by having that title. So I digress. All right, I am a husband and father of 4 kiddos. So yes, my wife is a saint because I am here tonight and not with them, putting them to bed and dealing with diapers and all of that fun stuff. So so you guys can all give her a big round of applause tonight. All right, so, and I will talk about my kids a little bit later because a lot of this actually has to do with if you're a parent, you will understand. If you're not a parent or not a parent yet, you will realize that a lot of these things have to do with parenting as well as in your professional life. So as I mentioned before, I'm the leader of the Raleigh-Durham Tableau user group. There's our little logo, not as cool as the DC one. I really do envy your DC user group. And I'm also a Tableau ambassador, but I'm specifically a user group leader ambassador. So if you are not from like in DC, or you want to start a user group, actually if you want to start a user group within your organization, that's a fantastic way to kind of keep it small and local. And then so I help people to really get engaged with the community. And so we've kind of been we're out there to help our Tableau community. I'm also the COE leader at Genworth Financial. And so actually in the mortgage insurance division, but I also run the analytics community in Genworth as a whole. So we're not just a mortgage or insurance company. We're a tech company, as most companies are in 2019. So, all right. So a few notes really quick. The first and foremost is self-service is a must. I think this kind of goes without saying, but it falls within Tableau's vision, which we'll talk about in just a second. But in order for you to enact any of these things, you have to understand that that Tableau works best, and answering questions with data works best when people are able to self-serve and to utilize the tool for themselves. And why is that? Well, Steve Jobs has a few great quotes about this, because you do have smart people within your organization. Steve Jobs says, notably, if you want to hire great people and have them stay working for you, you have to let them make a lot of decisions. You have to not be run by ideas. You have to be run by ideas. Sorry, not hierarchy. The best ideas have to win. Otherwise, good people don't stay. Same thing here. I'm sure everybody's heard this a dozen times, but it still rings true. It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. So you have smart people all around you within your organization. We'll talk about one of the detriments of not utilizing those smart people in just a minute. And as I mentioned before, it really goes with Tableau's philosophy that it's to put data, to bring data into the hands of everyone. And so democratizing data means that people who know the data should ask the questions. So the farther you are away from the data, the more time is going to be spent relaying, well, what does this metric mean? And what is this? And do I really know if this data is right? And how am I going to visualize this? But if we can take those tools into the hands of the people that are actually close to the data, we're that much farther along. And as I mentioned, all these things will be related like children. The people that we are training are going to need some hand holding, and that you're going to take times where it's going to feel like you're dragging them along by their heels, or they're running way too far out ahead, and you want to say stop. But again, like children, we do want them to grow and be successful and productive members of society. So, all right, so let's talk about what a Sherpa is. So a Sherpa is just literally a word for someone from the East. It's pronounced Sherwa in the original language. I know that's what you all wanted to learn about, is where the word Sherpa came from tonight. But what do? So these people they go and they help and they set up camp, they manage hikers, specifically in the Himalayas around Mount Everest, but it could also be really in any mountain range in Asia, or even here in Alaska or in the Rockies. You could have Sherpas in all those things by mountains. So they manage the hikers. I thought this was really funny. It says the most important job is they run ahead and make sure the tea is on the boil for the hikers. So just in case you ever thought you were too good to make tea, that you are not. So just remember your role. They are extraordinary human beings. So why is that? They know the area. They're highly skilled. And it actually, some of the research that I was reading said they are evolved to thrive in low oxygen environments. But critical here, and this will all come together, they are not invincible. I didn't want to put this on the slide, but just because it's a little morbid. But of the, I think it's around 500 some odd deaths that have happened in the past few years, a third of them have been Sherpas. So we think the Sherpas are invincible. They're the ones that are always up and down the mountain there, but they are actually, because they are out there, they're not invincible, though they are really powerful and strong. And so you'll see why that's important here in just a moment. So within your data visualization kind of team, or as you're helping others to grow, what are some pros to being able to kind of Sherpa someone into Tableau, into data visualization, into growth, right? So how you're helping them to grow. So oftentimes we can provide quick wins. So we can just take the data, take what they want to do, and just kind of do it for them, or kind of grab the mouse and just move that over there, because that's where it's supposed to be, rather than waiting patiently for them to figure it out. You can just kind of move it over there. So we can get some quick wins out of it. We get consistent and well-designed dashboards. So we get things like this. We've already kind of talked about Ryan Sleeper a little bit tonight, but one of these is Ryan Sleeper's dashboard. He's got a fantastic book. He's one of the leaders of the Kansas City Tableau user group. So just introducing you to all kinds of people tonight. But these are fantastic dashboards. And what does this ultimately mean? Happy stakeholders, right? We love to see happy faces. But there are some cons. Mistrust. So this whole conversation and this whole way of thinking started in me probably 7 years ago. I had someone in a different conversation, but they said, well, would you really trust such and such to make that decision or to do this for the whole thing? And I'm like, well, it depends. But the fact that you're saying that, it means you don't have a lot of trust in that person. You don't have a lot of trust in your people. And as a manager, if you have, and this person was a manager, it's like if you have that kind of mentality toward your employees, then there's a level. And so oftentimes when you're carrying someone along, you can kind of get this idea, well, oh, they can't be trusted with this sensitive data. They can't be trusted with this big dashboard that's going to the executive. So you'll oftentimes just say, well, it's easier for me to do this because I'll never be able to trust them. And you can obviously see the inherent flaws there. Rate limiting and bottleneck. We've all seen this, right? So as data and qualifications, qualifications and requests come in the door. The least number of people that we have taking those requests is going to obviously create a bottleneck, and we're going to be rate limited to how many dashboards those professionals, those Sherpas, you can churn out. So maybe your consistent and well-designed dashboards start to look like this, and then that's all you churn out because you create a template, and then you're just getting backlogged with so many dashboard requests that's all you're doing. That's all you're creating, and so then you've got a whole server full of dashboards that look exactly the same. They're not providing any value. They're not providing any differentiation between the different departments. And so what you're left with is you're just doing it all, and it oftentimes results in actually lower quality, I'd say. So this is funny. I actually thought this kind of looked like Brittany, but yeah, I guess she had the bangs. But anyway, but yeah, so you can get really, really frazzled. As I said before, these Sherpas, they have evolved over time, and they're really strong and knowledgeable and very skillful. But even the best of us will tire out. I know this because I've been there. And so no matter how much you think you can do, you will eventually wear out and tire out, and then once again your dashboards will suffer, your personal relationships will suffer because you think that you have to get all of these things done because everyone's relying on me and nobody can trust anything but everything that I do. And so your head's down, your work life suffers. I've even seen people that have been fired because of this right here. They didn't trust anyone else to do this. Take on their dashboards. They were an obvious rate limiting factor because it had to be exactly perfect, and no one else could do exactly the work that they did. And eventually, she not only tired out, it became a personal problem. So that's just serving as a warning. The rest of this talk is very happy, I promise. But just serves as a warning that this can be a really dangerous situation. We'll talk about and obviously the growth will be slight. And it will be slow in these circumstances. So there can be growth, but there won't be. So I'll give you some examples at the very end of how sometimes we can use some Sherpa techniques. All right, let's talk about shepherds. So actually, my second son's middle name is Shepherd, so I kind of like this word. So what does it mean? I think we all kind of know what a shepherd is, what a shepherd does, right? They tend and they care for the sheep. They protect from predators. They feed them. And what do? They give some leash, and they let them go out on their own. So yeah, they kind of give them. They use the sheepdog. That's actually I was gonna show a video on the sheepdog. I was like, it doesn't really go with my topic. But they've got the sheepdog, right? They can let them go out. They said 600 yards out. Rope them back in, lead them to where they want them to go. But they're giving them some leash, and they're letting them go out on their own. They're letting them experiment, find find better graphs, find newer things that, one set of eyes just can't see. So I think, as a shepherd, we want to do all these things. And again, as a parent, I want to do all of these things for my kids, obviously in incremental steps, but certainly, there are definitely times where I need to, be more of a shepherd and do these things, but while still caring for these sheep. So what are some of the cons? We're going to start backwards this time. Some of the cons: more opportunity for failure. Why? Because sheep are dumb. Right? I'll say your people are smart, but when they're getting started, right, they're pretty dumb with the tool. Oftentimes you literally want to run over and yank the mouse and say, no, don't put that on the color. Do not put that on the size. Okay. So we have to kind of live with a little bit of this failure. What else? Naturally worse dashboards and visualizations, because they don't have the same skills. They haven't read all the blogs. They haven't done 1,000 makeover Mondays like the rest of us sometimes. So they're going to be worse at first. And time to put those dashboards in production, time to show those dashboards to your executive leadership, that's going to be pretty slow, because having somebody that's just gotten a license and giving that to one of your executive leaders, it's probably not the smartest thing for you to do as a team leader or as someone who's helping to kind of train up and build your Tableau team. So what are some of the pros? Most important, I can't reiterate this enough, we want to empower these users. We always want to empower the people that we're working with, the people that we're training. We want to help them to grow beyond anything that we could do, right? Because all the time, no matter where we're at, if it's just us, we're always the rate limiting factor. We have 2 people, we have 3 people, we have 4 people. We're always going to be able to grow larger and bigger than we could as a single person. So we can do more with more people, again, that are closer to the data. Business relevant questions. So I mentioned this before, Tableau's philosophy. We want to have people that actually know the questions they're asking and be able to answer those questions. And that only happens when we're able to give some leash and let them discover these things and ask these questions with the tools. And finally, there's a greater ability for growth. I mentioned this before. We're empowering people. So not only does it empower them as a person, it helps them grow their career, helps them grow really, like self-esteem, helps them grow, the team that you're on, but also as a corporation. This is one of the greatest ways, and I probably speak about this in every single Tableau user group I go to. Every time I'm in front of any one of our managers or executives, I speak about this, because this type of mentality really helps to grow a corporation, a business within, no matter what it is. If it's Tableau, obviously, because that's the best way for us to get the most amount of value out of our data. But really, anyway, if we're gonna treat people, like smart people, and we're gonna give them some leash, we're gonna see some failure, but it's gonna happen fast, and we're gonna ultimately grow our entire organization. All right. So where are you at? Do you need a few quick wins? Is everything really messy and discombobulated and looks like somebody painted it with a crayon? Do you want to showcase the art of the possible? So some of the amazing, dare I say, sexy dashboards that you see on Tableau Public, do you want to show your executives some of these things that are possible? Well, you might need a Sherpa. You might need to Sherpa these people. You might need to give them a hand, move that mouse, take over one of the, let them go to town, and then you casually take it, but all at the same time, you're helping them to grow by showing them, again, what's possible. What are the areas where you can grow? So I think that none of that Sherpa and carrying, it never happens. You don't see Sherpas running up and down the mountain, right? They're not doing it for themselves. They're always doing it to help others so they can achieve their goals, right? Are you developing most or all of the dashboards? Do you have a lack of trust in your Tableau developers or your data or your team? Are you stuck in waterfall methodology? This could be quite a sticky situation. You may need to shepherd. And I found a picture of a girl shepherd. How cool is that? I couldn't see a lot of girl shepherds on the internet, so I was really excited to find that one. So you may need to shepherd. You may need to let go of the reins a little bit. Have some trust. Realize that whether you hired them or your manager or your executives hired them, they're not hiring dumb people. They're hiring very smart people. I mean, they hired you, right? So all right. again, I digress. So again, I mentioned I would talk about what a CO is really quickly. Establishing best practices, creating training and support channels, developing new dashboards and tools, identifying and prioritizing new data sources, and promoting and rewarding a culture of analysis. So nutshell here, provide the resources, enable your people, encourage your people, and incentivize them. Take them out for a beer. Bring some swag. We got tons of swag. We've got, you can think of easy, cheap ways to incentivize people to grow, right? So it's really, really helpful. Realize that it's always going to be one step forward and two steps back. If you've got children, you understand this. Whether they're walking, whether they're learning to ride a bike, whatever it is, these things just are so interconnected. They just might surprise you. Thank you so much for your time. And do you guys have any questions or roll? All right, anybody have any quick questions? Anything stick out?
In your ambassadorship for helping user groups get up and running, what are some, I mentioned a lot of these principles still apply, but is there a certain outline of how to do that well, or certain calls to be aware of, things that work really well?
Yes, there are actually quite a few documents out on Tableau's website that for actual to go back and refer to for documentation. Because I could really go on for a while about this. Tableau's new blueprint is fantastic. It talks about from the data side to the training side to the kind of support side. So those are kind of the three areas of Tableau's new blueprint. Those are just it's just fantastic, and it's actually what my goals are now as I lead our COE and our community of analytics. So Tableau's kind of goals have become my goals. Pitfalls to avoid, allowing, I guess, I don't know how many, raise your hand if you're in IT. Oh, wow, that's impressive. Only a small number. That's perfect. So don't let IT own it. Try to have some support of sorry, I'm in IT, and I've been in IT for most of my career. But yeah, have some buy-in and support from around the business. That's really, actually, that was the perfect example, because where you want Tableau to exist is out in the business, where the business users are asking the questions. So you all just kind of proved my point. But yeah, so I'd say that's kind of one of the biggest things that people feel like, oh, it's just another IT project some IT's putting on. They're just going to, do this tool thing. But if it's a community effort and there's a lot of buy-in from a lot of the different departments, and get executive, support. I feel like Tableau is one of those things that always has to start from the ground up. But if it doesn't have if the leadership doesn't get it, it's not gonna go anywhere. I think Steve's gonna talk a little bit about some of that. So I'll let him kind of go into that. Anything else? Yep. Oh no. I think Caesar's given a talk like this before. Okay, you can ask me over beers.
Yeah, you asked suggestions about versioning and setting current in the enterprise space. And any tips you got for COE or just mobile. And everyone always wants that most current version. Not just really text.
Yeah, so I think technically it can be a challenge depending on your organization, how fast they can upgrade the server. Because if you don't have server, then there's an issue. But if you do have server, you can only publish up to server from the desktop version that you have available. So if you've got 10.5, which is what we are currently on, we have it on our server. I can't go upgrade my desktop to 2019.2 and expect to publish to, because there are features missing. There are just all sorts of mess there. So if you are truly getting you see a lot of features that you believe would impact how your people, like the things that your people struggle with. So this is another one of those areas where all of these things involve you being involved, you having your pulse on what the problems of your Tableau developers are. And so if you understand they're having problems, with color palettes or with creating this specific type of visualization, and you know in 2019.2 or 3 it's going to solve those problems, then you work toward that. But if you and this is having your having your finger on the pulse of your organization, but also talking with Tableau and figuring out, is this the right upgrade for my company? And I actually just talked to somebody at Tableau today, and I said, well, we're upgrading to 2019.2. We're in the process, and we are do I need to upgrade to 2019.3? And he said, well, no, because I know where you're at. There's really only 2 features that we might be beneficial, but really 2019.2 is going to take you a long way from 10.5. So those types of conversations really do happen, and are really important. I guess communication is the biggest issue. Just fight through that, work with your people, figure out what are the struggles, what are the features, and do they line up? And then really, they can't really have a say, because if the server is at one version, technology will always be the factor in determining your versioning. So is that a sufficient answer? Okay. All right, I think I'm done. Thank you.
There's still a ton in there. Also, drink before use the restroom, and then Steve will be up as soon as we get back.
Okay, that's a good sign.
There we go.
Okay, so share, but I need to share that. That's not a second, it's great.
So yeah.
Do I have? I'm gonna have to record my slide here.
No, think you
Well,
can.
so here's what happens: is that when I go in the presenter view,
It's going to automatically put that one in the presentation.
and then you know what it does? Here's what I can try to do. Let's see if we can get this as 2 screens. Display settings, seems as 2 screens. Let me extend these displays, and then it'll make one thing a little tricky, but not a problem, because I'm going to be doing a live demo. It's not going to be possible.
I see.
Okay, so let's try this. Let me go to there's a second guy.
Oh, it's this little guy, actually. Maybe hit that drop. Okay.
Share. This open the screen is where?
It's always so
Yeah.
hard.
Well, it would have been fine if you weren't recording. It's not on my laptop. This is not a high resolution. That's horribly oversaturated. Well, yeah. We'll just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yes, did this, and all they have to do is, I don't know what the control is, they just have to change the context.
Yeah.
Let's yep. Yeah, good. Just go.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
I don't have it.
Good evening. I'm Steve Wexler, and the title of this is The Secret to Getting People to Use Dashboards. I think that's incredibly presumptuous. There's not speak, it's a technique that may help people use dashboards. I am the founder, principal, and sole employee of Data Revelations. I was Tableau's inaugural Iron Biz champion a really long time ago. I'm a 5-time Tableau Zen master, and I'm very proud of that, and I have it on my business card. But realize there are a lot of people who are not in the Tableau community who don't know that Zen master is an actual thing. It's considered a very high honor within the community. And if you hand them a card and it says Tableau Zen master, they think you're a complete tool. What jerk calls himself a Tableau Zen master? I'm very proud of that, but in the data visualization space, the thing I'm most proud of is being one of the 3 authors of the Big Book of Dashboards. We have a copy of it over there, and I will be happy to, we will have a free drawing for that at the end of this session. Let me explain the purpose of the book, and this is a segment in the book that I'm going to be doing today. This is Andy Cochran, he's one of my co-authors. This is his author copies of the book, and that's his beautiful bookcase at home. What we were attempting to do is to take our now combined 40 years of experience in data visualization and encapsulate it into one book. For the most part, the reviews of the book have been very strong. The book is now in its 3rd printing. You can go on Amazon and see very strong reviews. There have been some notable exceptions to that. This one comes from Andy's daughter. This is my dad's book, and I think it's really boring because it's about dashboards. In all fairness, she was not the target market for this book. Question for you, have any of you ever worked on a product or service and you had an idea of how people are going to use it, and then you started seeing people using it in ways that you had never imagined before? Any of you had that at all? A bunch of people will tweet or send us pictures of ways that they use the Big Book of Dashboards, and it's not what we had in mind when we created the book. This is one of my favorites. All right, an overarching thing that goes with any presentation I give and any workshop is, if you keep these 3 things in mind that I'm about to show you after the lovely clip art or stock photo that Jeff purchased, if you keep these things in mind, you're likely to go on the right path in terms of the way you're visualizing data. Who is your audience? What is the message? And my God, it's taken me almost 13 years to distill what I'm supposed to be doing down to a single sentence. For the largest number of people, provide the greatest degree of understanding with the least amount of effort. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Make it easy for a large group of your audience to be able to get it without them having to work hard. You may have to work hard, but they shouldn't have to. But first, I got to show you something ridiculously cool. It just happened like within the last week. Does anybody know what that is? This is, go ahead.
Is it like the first timeline or something?
That is ground zero for the use of the timeline, where dinosaurs are that way, although at the time they didn't know about dinosaurs. Where Adam and Eve are way over to the left, Middle Ages is here, and Star Trek is over that way. Or whatever. This was created by Jacques Barbeau-Dubourg in 1753. It's called the Topographie Universelle. And what you were looking at, it's in the scroll. It's 54 feet wide. You're looking at 140 years at one time. You can move and look at it. And this is ground zero for the timeline as we know. Okay? This is a few years later. Oh, sorry about that. That's 1765. That was Joseph Priestley. He had an incredibly innovative idea. Let's only get it on one page. Okay? This is the entire known, every person of note in the history of humankind and amazing events that happened. Okay? That's from 1765. Any of you seen this? This is William Playfair. It is a line chart, and yes, and you can probably read this and go, it's from 1786. I actually can see what's going on with it. Right? So last Friday, I made a pilgrimage to Princeton University with Andy Humphrey, one of my co-authors, and R.J. Andrews. Did any of you see R.J. this week? He was down. Okay, so did you talk about this at all and say that you got to see this? So I was much more smitten with him than he was with me, I guess. Okay, fine. I got to go down, and you've got to understand, take a look at this. That is the equivalent, the data visualization equivalent of an original Magna Carta, an original Declaration of Independence, and an original Constitution of the United States, all side by side by side. You have to touch it and study it and look at it and seeing it with their eyes. They are scholars and have really great erudition about the field. They were giddy with excitement that it was infectious for me. So that was ridiculously cool to get to see that. And this thing in particular, there may be a second edition of this. They think there may be one in France. There are lots of the priestly and the Playfair stuff. But this thing, this may be the only one that's in existence. And it was just amazing. Okay, now let's do boring stuff. So why aren't people using my dashboards? I have probably created more dashboards that people don't use than anybody else that I know. And it's very frustrating. Why aren't they using these things? And any of you having that experience as well, you create this thing, you think it's really useful, and people are not using it to the extent that you might like. Any of you running into this, I don't need your dashboards, I don't need charts. I just want a spreadsheet. And if anyone running into that, if you are, just raise your hand for a minute. Okay? So this is kind of my amalgam of all of my clients that I've had over the years who have said that. And you know, you can have my spreadsheet when you pry it from my cold, dead hands. Okay, so that's one issue that you may be dealing with. Here's another one, which is your dashboard has too many bar charts, and bar charts are boring. Make your stuff more interesting. That's why people aren't using it. Are any of you running into that at all? You're saying the stuff isn't as engaging, or you think, maybe if I make this thing sexier, we'll use it. Anyone running into that? Okay, you're in a safe space. Thank you. I'm running into that a fair amount as well. That is, you're trying to do the thing that's on the left, which, by the way, on my, if you turn around, you'll see it's green. Up here, it's this pale blue. So better view of the stuff back there, but we'll manage with this. The thing on the left is what Tableau wants you to do if you just use the tool properly. And what's the thing on the right? You discover the show me button. Go, oh man, this is so cool. Look, I'm going to show people that. And you're running down this path of how do I make the data more interesting? That is if that's occurring to you and that's the thing you're running into, it's probably going to bring you down a bad path. I'm going to explain. So I'm going to show you a quote from Edward Tufte that I saw maybe 2-3 years ago, and I really liked it. I don't like Edward Tufte, but I do like this quote. If your numbers are boring, get some interesting numbers. If you get some interesting numbers, you may learn something interesting. Well, it's really good. It's kind of fitting into this presentation I'm doing. I remember a month after seeing this, I went back on Twitter trying to find this quote. I couldn't find it, only to discover that he had Tufte following me on Twitter. Turns out he's blocked a lot of people. They're way more famous than I am, so I don't. In any case, this idea of, oh, this is boring, what are we going to do to get people engaged with it? I want to show you another way this is kind of went down a poison path. One of this has a really, really bad data visualization challenge. This is the financial statement, the balance sheet of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I guess it was published in 2014. There was someone who I would say, this person should know better, said, you know what? I'm going to do a makeover of this to get people more engaged with this data. I want you to see a few things in particular. Okay, look at this number. That's 43 billion. This is expressed in thousands. So it was 43 billion this year, and previous year it was 40 million. Look at this number, 688 million. Previous year it was 692 million. So you're dealing with something that's way, way bigger. And this person thought, hey, let's make this more engaging. Let me show you what this person came up with. Okay? Oh my God, look at this. 692 million. It has plummeted to 688. That should be flat. That's almost flat. But also, look at the overall height of this thing. This is 692 million. This is 43 billion. This thing should be going up through the 3rd floor. You know, my reaction to this was, what? And supposed to, you know, people are very good at comparing heights from a common baseline. And this says, this thing you're great at, don't do it. Just look at the numbers. And it is reminiscent of something like this. You've seen, come on, you've seen the examples of this type of thing before. If the numbers weren't there, how bigger is the bar on the right and the bar on the left? It's like, you know, it's like 2.5 times, somewhere between 2 and 3 times as much. You're really good at doing that. So in fact, or here's another version of this. Oh my God, if Bush tax cuts expire, they're going to go from 35% to, that's 5 times as big. No, this is what it's actually showing. Okay, so just so that you don't think I am just hitting on Fox News, although it's a great source of stuff. You know, here's something from NBC. By the way, I'm pretty sure in this case, you know, this is what the numbers should be, and I'm pretty sure in this case it was someone that just, you know, they mislabeled. They weren't trying to purposely mislead. In any case, the Bill and Melinda Gates thing and the Fox News thing are examples of what someone has coined the phrase. He calls them turds. I think Christopher Danielson first came up with this. And what is a turd? A truly unfortunate representation of data. But the whole Bill and Melinda Gates thing, in addition to a sequel, it's why are you even visualizing that? There's so much great stuff in the annual report. So why do you want someone looking at the balance sheet stuff? Plus, the balance sheet stuff by law has to be reported a certain way. It just struck me as being a bad idea. And I see this all the time. I was working with a major consulting organization, and they were doing a global human resources survey. And part of the survey was a demographics dashboard. Who took the survey? Just give you a sense of what country are these people, what the ages, what is the industry, what are the income levels, etc. And consider this a simple version of this. And the following year, they said, well, this is boring. So we want to get people more excited about the survey. So they took the most boring aspect of the survey, the demographics, which should just be at the end, and they created something that looks like this. Okay? And this is an example of, and we may or may not have sound, I don't know. We don't. And it's something in the book we call a screaming cat, which is we want you, if you're thumbing through the book, we want you to know when you shouldn't be doing something. And you should not be making something that looks like this. It looks pretty cool. It's more interesting. You've got the Mondrian up here. Let's get that. You've got the Mondrian up here. You've got the packed bubbles over here, and people love circles. I don't know what some of the traditionalists, but they must be angry because they're red. And as we can clearly see, we have more men than women because there's a number here that says 52. See, and your stakeholder will spend 2 minutes trying to parse this thing and realize, yeah, so what? And that's not what you want from the data visualization. So it's not the dashboard, it's the data that's boring, or is it the context? And this is the epiphany. This is the thing that's going to take pressure off you. You're going to have to make these incredible looking pieces of art. How do organizations try to make stories interesting? Think about what happens when there is a plane crash or some type of disaster. There's a plane crash in Malaysia or something like that. Okay, so this is now newsworthy on the front page of the news, or it's the first thing that the anchor person is saying. What is the first words when they say 737 MAX or whatever it is crashed today in Malaysia or some way different across the globe? What's the first words out of his or her mouth? What? Breaking news, after they say the plane has crashed, what's the first thing that they say? What? No, but what are they going to tell you? Survivors. Okay, survivors. What are they more likely to tell you? How many did? Okay, there were this many people died. What's the next thing? Think about it. They want you to be interested in this, and this is a plane crash that happened. Who cares about it? It's happening halfway across the globe. How many Americans were on board? Exactly. Exactly. And by the way, it isn't just the Americans who are narcissists. You've seen this with every other type of people. And a lot of times, if there's a crash, only people reported if there weren't Americans that were on board, you're not going to hear about it. So what is it that interests people? And it's stuff about themselves. And I'm not saying that, oh my gosh, everyone is narcissistic. Somehow put things through this filter, people will become very interested in your dashboards. Anyone know who this is? Whoa, okay, Ed Koch, and he was the mayor of New York City from 1977 to 1985. He had a famous catchphrase. Anyone remember this? You're good, you can come back to any time we're presenting. Yes, how am I doing? And people are dying to know that type of stuff. How much better is this tug than most other tugs? Although there are some very good tugs. But these type of questions people go nuts for. How much older, younger am I than others? How is the store I manage performing compared with others? How did my session compare with others? What is my salary? How common is my birthday? How much will I save if I use a generic drug? Ooh, this is the key to make that demographics thing. How do people like me respond to the survey? Oh, now I'm interested in the demographics. Are any of you starting to see this with your utility bills here? What if the neighbors are watching how peer pressure can be used to lower energy bills? And are any of you seeing any utility doing this? I'm getting this. And this is what they started to do in California. They were really worried about brownouts and people not being conservative. So they started saying, hey, here's what you're expending in energy, and here's what your cooler neighbors who are in green are doing. Don't you want to be more like that? As a way of saying, hey, you're doing better than most, but you're not doing as well as your neighbors. And proved to be pretty effective. And they did a pretty nice job here showing you the use of your stuff over time. Let me show you how it can focus a visualization and possibly make it interesting to you. This is a histogram showing the age distribution in the United States. Okay? And the way to read it is that's the age along the bottom, and the height of the bar is how many people are of that age. This is from roughly 2014. One of these days, I will update this. Now, I find this fascinating. I'm looking at it and going, whoa, I see something interesting. My friends and family who are not data geeks look at this and go, this is boring. But if you're a data geek, you want to know, hey, what happened to it, right? How many people looked at that and went, oh, click like that? So right around people who are the age between 65 and 66, suddenly the number of people in the United States that are 66 are way fewer than the number of people who are 65. Does anyone know what's happening? Why that cliff and that drop off? That is what I hope, which strikes me as, okay, you work really hard, you retire, then you die. That's very sad about that. Though there is a rationale, which is some people are losing, a sense of purpose or meaning in their lives, so they don't have work. I thought that was the reason. Someone came up with a much better. Boom! Okay, he gets to come to any presentation I give as well. Yes, baby boomer generation. If I'm correct, and if you're correct, so that's right around 1946, based on the data that I have. So you have these people who there's a big influx. So anyone born before, there are far fewer people born before 1946. If you and I are both correct, if I ever get my act together and update this data, that thing should just move back 5 or 6 years. It should not be at 65, 66. It should be at 71 or 72. So you get the idea. Well, I want to make this thing irresistible to my stakeholder. So I'm going to make it about them. And a bunch of you have seen this before. I'm going to try to do this live, and hopefully it will cooperate. Here we go. So a little washed out, but here's the way to read it. If you are 40 years old, you are older than 53% of all Americans. Here are the people who are younger than you. Here are the people that are older than you. Yeah, by the way, okay, I'm going to do the all, I'm going to ask for volunteers. Just realizing we're over 50 is saying very interesting. Just be aware of it. So, would anyone like to give me his or her age? And I will plug it in, and I will tell you how much older or younger you are than the rest of the United States.
25.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, poor you.
I used to be that.
Okay, 25. Oh, you know what? Sorry. It's now reloaded. Thank you. And the fact that I can't have a type in and a slider at the same time with tablet and your male, and you are older than 34.5% of the male Americans. Okay, you are definitely on the young side. Okay, anyone else want to volunteer?
62.
62. You look marvelous, by the way. Thank you. Okay, you are 62. Just be prepared. We're roughly the same vintage. 62. I found this very depressing when I put this in. You are older than 84.2% of male Americans. And I'm roughly the same age and was bummed out until I realized my brother is 5 years older than I have a weird day-to-day kind of existence in that work out at the gym really early, and I'll go to the cafe, and I'll hang out with all the my parents' generation. These people were between 80 and 95. And one of them said, hey, put my age in. I said, he's really he's 83 years old. He's older than 98% of the country. He's very depressed. But this becomes, you can't help. You're going to put your own age in. You're going to put your partner's age in. You're going to put your kids, your parents, your brother, etc. This data has now become focused, and you have a much better understanding because you and people you care about are the star of the data, and that's pretty potent. Let me go back to, as I try to find where my mouse is. There it is. I'm going to show you some other examples of this and how potent it can be, and I'll show you an example of some other things. I'm waiting for this thing to play. There we go. Okay, this is from the Big Book of Dashboards. This is actually, no, this is Curtis Harris doing something based on the Big Book of Dashboards where he is showing, hey, here is my ratings in blue against other people in the park in gray, and the college overall is the vertical line. This is really nicely done here. Here's his rating. Here's other people in the department where it's clearly stated, and this is the average college rating. You could do this for each professor. This is a speaker rating where I'm comparing some speaker with the average of everybody else, and the problem with averages of everybody else, which is the only data that Curtis had here, is you don't see the highs and lows. You think, wow, this person's just, hitting it out of the park, 4.5, 4.8, etc. But if we disaggregate the data, this is called the jitter plot, where each of those little dots, they're just kind of randomly sent. You now see, hey, this 4.2, yeah, it's above the median, but it isn't this, hitting out of the park type of thing. There's another way to show the same data. I want to just focus for a second. Hopefully, the screen will resonate really, resolution will be clear. The delights of disaggregated data. This is a salary comparator where you get to see, here's my salary compared to the average of everybody else. So you're the orange dot, and that's your salary compared to the average of everybody. How pissed off are you? Right. You're making, you're making, what, 83,000 a year, and you're seeing the average like 110, 111. Probably a little peaky. I'm going to show you exactly the same data, where you can see everybody's little dot and where your dot is with it, and you're going to go from peaky to like really pissed off. Okay. That's exactly the same thing. What I can't see just because the resolution is this. That's the 75th percentile, the median, lower quartile. You're way down well, you're still at 83. So it's the average of everybody. You can see how that stuff works. So I'm a big believer of summary data can sometimes lose a lot of nuance. And if you can show where am I, people will gravitate towards those dashboards. Other possible ways to show, this is the jitter plot, and this is another possible way to show it. It's called a unit histogram. But both of them have the same idea. Where am I in the universe? And if I'm not doing well, what do I need to do better? And I want to explain why I'm so excited about this idea of my dot versus everybody's dot. It doesn't have to be a jitter plot where you're kind of spreading the dots left and right. This is the first experience I had where visualization saw everybody in the tracks, where it changed the way an organization worked. They were trying to get people to understand how bad a problem they were having in the organization in terms of incidents of other diseases. They said, here you go. Your organization is 18.5%. The average of other organizations like you is 4.9%. You're like, wow, yeah, that's pretty bad. It's like 4 times worse. I guess we should do something about it. When they saw it like this, which is, look at everybody else, they're all clustering down here, and you are one of the very worst there is. It just hit them in a way that just the numbers did. So that's why I'm excited about that. Let me show you some other examples of where this individualized, or let me make it that stakeholder and put that into this. How am I doing on time, by the way? Okay. Okay, now we're gonna be fine. This is the first Tableau public viz of which I'm aware that went viral, meaning a whole bunch of people wrote that. And what it is, and this is 10 years ago or 9 years ago, somebody, Andy Kriebel, and what you could do is explore the popularity of your birthday. By the way, looking at this, so the darker the square is, the darker the rectangle, the more popular the birthday is. So obviously February 29th probably has one of the least dark splotches that are there. By the way, looking at this, what looks to be the month that has the most birthdays? Okay, yeah, thank you. So everyone's saying September, what does that mean? Oh, yeah, Christmas New Year's. Okay, that makes sense. In any case, people will start exploring. People are looking at partners, etc. It gives you much greater nuance of this. Second time Curtis Harris has shown up. You should follow his work. He does great stuff. He took massive amounts of Freddie Mac data. You have someone who does great work. Is there more than one person Freddie Mac over here? There we go. And had all years of housing data for all 50 states. How do you make sense of this thing? Hey, go ahead, say when you bought your house. Where did you buy your house, and how much did you spend on it? And it will show the waxing and waning. And this person should be pretty pleased because they bought kind of the lowest part of the market, and the value of their home is up almost 56%. And if you're going to use it in the own house, you can do exactly the same thing. Great job of making this stuff useful. So anytime you can personalize the stuff and make it about a stakeholder and insert them into it, it takes a huge amount of pressure off in terms of cool stuff. No, if you have the person in there somehow, you're going to do a great job. The other thing to keep in mind is something that I got from reading this book. Dear friend and colleague Kelly Martin, who's probably been in the quality of Tableau dashboards. Before I started writing the book of dashboards, she said you should read this. And badass thinking users also, this is the main thrust of the book, whereas people don't want to be badass at using your tool. They want to be badass at what using your tool allows them to do. That's not what I got from the book. What I got from the book was, how is what I'm doing going to qualify? What is it that they want? What is it that they need to see? It helped me show off less. So, and it now informs everything I do. Let me give you an example of this. I'm going to show you a typical agenda slide. Okay, so like I said, I'm doing a workshop, which I'm doing tomorrow, and I'm not going to show a slide like this because it drives me nuts. But someone's going to put something like this up there, right? Okay, well, and we're going to do this. Now, what is it that everybody in the audience wants to know? That's what they want to know. Right? So in fact, and what is it they're looking for is to become, if you look at my workshop handouts, all the breaks and the meals are in orange. Because I'm going to make it really easy for you to find the thing you're looking for. So let's go back to the quote-unquote boring dashboard. How can I make this of greater utility? Well, I can ask the person, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself ahead of time? Oh, woman, baby boomer from South America. By the way, the seed for this came, any of you know who Elisa is? Elisa, okay. She was, until recently, the chief marketing officer at Tampa. And she was the judge of all one of the judges of all Tableau Iron Biz competitions. 2014, Iron Biz was about Yelp data. And everyone got the same data set and said, do something cool with this data. And people were trying to use the same restaurant should I go to, it's cool, it's expensive. And she brought up something interesting. She said the thing she found most frustrating about using Yelp was who was giving reviews of the stuff. Was it some 18-year-old who was just impressed with portions versus someone that may be looking at the meal experience or as she was looking at the experience and said, boy, that's a good point. So why would you want to know these things? Well, do I really care what a Malay thinks about something? Maybe my kids are more or am I more interested in what baby boomers think about things? So this ability to triangulate and say, oh, hey, female baby boomers South America, they're 36 people just like you survey. Would you like to see what they know of these things? Because you may be more interested in their opinion than everybody else's. That said, you know, if someone's still giving you a hard time about doing a bar chart, you can give them a lollipop chart, you can give them something called the vegan dot. The reason these things work well is humans are amazing at judging the distance or the length of something from the common baseline. And that's why you use a bar chart, because people can immediately see that's twice as big as this is 3 times as big as that. This is just a variation of the fact. But don't do the pat bubbles and the crappy stupid things because you think you have to be a little more interesting. No, you want to help your people, and you'll eliminate the entire GIP, make this thing look cool, if you are able to somehow insert a stakeholder into this. We cover this at length in the big book of dashboards, and I have a lot of information about this at datarevelations.com. Shall we do the drawing for the book, and then we'll take a few questions? I have no idea, you know. Oh, we're okay. All right, so does anyone have a coin, preferably a quarter I can borrow? Does anyone actually have physical cash anymore? You know what, I know there's an app I can get. So I would like to borrow a quarter. Outstanding, thank you. Okay, if you are interested in a free copy of the book and one of the finest doorstops known to humankind, stand up. If you're interested, if you'd like a free copy of this thing, stand up. I'm about to flip a coin. If you think it's going to be heads, raise your right hand. If you think it's going to be tails, your left. Right hand or left hand, one of them has to go up. Don't wait to see which one it is. Okay, here we go. And heads is right hand, tails is left. It is heads. So if you chose, if you have your right hand up, stay up. If you have your left hand up, sit down. Okay, right hand, or I'm about to flip again. Right is heads, left is tails. Ready? Here we go. Make your decisions, and it is tails. Okay, all right, we're getting down to brass tacks here. Here we go, and hands up, made a decision, heads or tails. Here we go, and looking to see, and it is tails. Oh, we're down to 4. Okay, here we go. These are exciting. Oh, we're time for a commercial break. Right, Juice and hands. Right, make a decision. Okay. It is tails. I believe we only have one person. My pleasure. Here you go. You get this back. This should be the birthday thing. You have just about the right number. Well, we've got some other time. Any questions? Yeah.
Super easy.
So all that's happening is instead of having the dots all on the strip, what happens is you can't tell where the dots are clustered. So in some way and your audience may not understand it at first because there's no difference between the dot that's over here and the dot that's here. It's just the up and down. So you may need to explain that to them. 5 seconds to do that. Oh, the animation feature that's coming out in Tableau that's an alpha. You know, just you press a little thing and say jitter and just go like that will be amazing. The easiest way to do it is how do I create a jitter in Tableau, Google it, and you'll have 12 people, me being one of them, saying here's how you do this. But yeah, it's unlikely that how do we figure that out? Someone else has figured out how to do this. Okay, so that's how you do the jitter, and it's not like one of these things where you have to go to Sankey view and do ridiculous stuff. It's actually pretty easy to set up. Other questions over here?
Thank you for your presentation. I've been given advice when doing that work, not put the question, but the big person who want to say, is your house more expensive than the neighbor's? So what's your opinion on that?
Well, you could say, how much more expensive is my house than my neighbor's? Oh, no, that's a good question. What? So, I'm sure there's a wonderful way to come at this, but there has been some research that the most compelling thing you can do in terms of getting people at the dashboard is a title that will bring people in. I question that in business use. I certainly understand that this is going to be for general public. So Michelle Borkin did some research on this, and she was kind of nothing. She only did a survey of 35 people, but there's since been other research. So, have a title which has some type of meaning in some way of bringing them in. I don't know if I agree. I'm happy to see the article with the advice and say, gee, what's the thesis for not having a question mark there? Because it says, that is a good question. I was wondering the same thing. So I'm curious why. Can you elaborate at all why they said, or did they just say don't do it with the question? Because it suggests a lack of confidence and you're supposed to be providing answers.
Yeah, I guess the dashboard there to answer it, especially if you don't hear the dashboard.
I'm sure we can come up with something that's compelling, which is a saving instead of haven't given enough thought. It's a cool idea. Anything else? All right, go ahead.
Actually, personal question about you. I was looking at your profile on LinkedIn just a moment ago. What? Okay, your original background was in music. What made you transition from music to data visualization?
To meet women, of course. No. That's why
It's because you were a bass player.
It's an interesting thing. One of the reasons that I gravitated towards Jeff Shaker, who runs the Cincinnati TUG, adjunct professor of business at University of Cincinnati, one of the chief officers at Unify, is that he was also has a master's in music. And then he did a visualization about himself and went, oh my gosh, this guy is doing great work. And he's also a musician. I got him in. Mostly it was when I was doing music as a full-time profession, it was somewhat difficult to figure out. So I ended up running the software. And now I'm trying to balance my time. It's about a pretty good 15-piece program today. Mostly because the other people play their bad, serious bad. And then, but I love doing this. By the way, there are a lot of recovering musicians that are doing data visualization. All right, hey, Brittany, thank you so much for
Stop sharing.
Oh, that could have been bad. That could have been really bad. Thank you.
No.
Any Nets fans here? Probably not. Probably Nets fans. Yeah. Okay, I'll shut up. My dream is at some point is that is to work at some Royals, Nationals, Yankees, or whatever, and require it and say, oh, you have to be using divergent colors. You have to use blue and orange. Sorry.
Brittany gave everyone like 3 minutes.
Yes, there we go.
So,
Okay.
I'm just going to do some technology. Is that good? It's thinking.
Maybe it's not. You have 2 screens.
I do. We'll try this side.
Yeah.
Is that what you're supposed to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Good evening. My name is Eric. I'm glad to be here. I actually came down the train from Philly. Lived there and worked for Comcast in their enterprise business intelligence group. I will learn a little bit more about you as we go through here, so I'm going to leave it at that for just a second. Thanks for having me down. I wanted to start today by first of all saying, when Brittany called me and asked me if I'd like to come speak, I said, yes, I'm not going to show any dashboards, although I got the rules on that a little bit to tell a bit of the story. And I'm not really going to talk about Comcast. And he said, okay, yeah, sounds good. What I wanted to do is actually thinking back to the number one question that I get when I'm out talking to folks. It's usually, how do I get to do what you do? Or how do I get to the place where you are in your career? And so when I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you tonight, I was thinking about that, but then also started thinking about where that's leading you to go. I want to involve you in that conversation. So that's what we're going to go through tonight. So before I get into kind of my story, I'd like to just start with asking you, what about you? How many of you are just getting started with Tableau? I'd say less than a year. Yeah. Okay. Like 2 to 5 years? That's pretty good. But anyone more than 5 years? Okay, we got a couple of veterans. How long, Aaron? I thought you were going to say 20 years. 2011. Okay. And you said you did the first Iron Viz,
Which was back in 1957.
right? I mean, you were still most of America.
Well, no, it was Tableau for the IBM 360. Yeah. So
What
so
version?
going really?
Yeah.
What I started with version 2 of Tableau.
Version 2.
2006. The first Iron Viz was 2011.
Okay.
So it's not
All right. No, yeah. So, Steve, what was the first
data visualization that you did, like your first project? You remember the topic?
Yeah.
What was it?
Survey data.
Oh, survey. Okay. All right.
And by the way, I sucked. I mean, with all capital letters. So there's hope.
Who else who's just like, wants to share? What's the first database that you worked on? What is it? Fraud. What is it? Fraud. Fraud. Okay, that's great. Yeah. What else? How about you? Trading. Which is trading. Okay, that's great. Yeah.
I was working with badge swipe data for people coming and going.
That's probably pretty interesting. I always thought, like, in one of the buildings at Comcast, they have the elevators where you put the floor in. If you guys seen that, you can tell it where you're going, then you get an elevator and it just goes. I think, like, from an algorithmic standpoint, that's got to be like the least sexy, hardest job in terms of any kind of predictive algorithm. Because like most people don't think about it. But yeah, if the elevator still has to figure out like how many people it should let in, and so on. So we got a wide variety of stuff. And then the last question I want to ask you is, where do you see yourself going from where you are today? Maybe just really share, like, you just like look out, a year or two, whatever your time horizon is, or maybe it's longer than that. What do you want to achieve? Like, where do you see yourself going? Might just be next week. Yeah.
Getting official certification in Tableau.
Okay, Tableau certification. Great.
It's more about where the future of Tableau is going, especially with the acquisitions in Salesforce, being Salesforce heavy, seeing how it's going to tie in, how Salesforce might rely more heavily on Tableau for data visualization.
Okay, and that's something you're interested in being a part of? I see. All right. Anyone else? Yeah.
Training.
Training. In what area?
Tableau, visual best practice.
Okay, so the tool and how to design. Yeah. Great. This has been just like a really interesting ride. And I haven't been on the train as long as Steve has and some other folks in the room, but it's been pretty amazing over the past, I guess it would be about 10 years since I started really working with data visualization. And just now to give you a little bit of background about me. My first job was actually as a news photographer. And this is when people say, tell me like where you started. And I said, it's kind of complicated, but it'll make sense. My first job was as a news photographer for a small daily newspaper in the Midwest, in Ohio, Middletown Journal. Did that for a couple of years, and then decided I wanted to make the transition into television as part of going into the study at Ohio University. Work. So I spent 4 years there learning how to write, produce, direct for television. So news photography, about composition and starting to frame an idea and telling a story. Now with TV, it's about writing and actually trying to figure out how to put that story into words and how to create a narrative flow, walk people through a set of ideas. Then when I left school, graduated, I started going right into graphic design. So interesting period, 1995, desktop publishing had really advanced to the point where it wasn't just desktop publishing, it was now internet doing like interactive designs and all those technologies that we use every day today. Those were just forming. So I thought that would be exciting. So I actually went into kind of digital interactive design. After that, moved on to marketing and advertising because when I was working and spent a lot of time thinking about an idea and the right color blue, what the brand identity was, I encountered a lot of emotion about that. And we would have conversations like, I like that color blue. And, well, we really spent a lot of time thinking about this color blue. Let me walk you through why it's the right one for your brand and the experience you want your consumers to have. And the answer is, well, I just bought a brand new car, and it's that color blue. I really like that blue, which is why I bought that car. Why does that needs to be color blue on our logo? Because that reminds everyone about me or some story like that. That was kind of frustrating. So when I was in marketing and advertising, we started to be able to learn how to use research, actually back up ideas and actually prove which would result in a better outcome for your business. And also then convincing people about an idea and trying to help guide them down the path. I don't know if that would be Sherpa or Shepherd, maybe that's maybe a little bit of both, depending on the day. And then moved into analytics and intelligence. So when I talk to folks and they ask me like what I do today at Comcast, it's really more about trying to unearth kind of the essential insight for our executive team and help them understand the implications of decision or why we're here. And when you think about it and you look at kind of all the skills that are involved in that, storytelling, understanding data, being able to craft visual narrative, and something that's simple and easy to understand and get the point across, that's kind of what got me. And this is the path that I took. Now, around 2009, in that analytics and intelligence bucket, I was leading a team for consultancy, and that was really before all the tools like Tableau that we have today. They were there, just not as popular. There were, if you wanted to build an application to display dashboards, in that point, we had to actually build it ourselves. We had to code. So I had a customer, and the customer came to me with this great idea. They wanted to build dashboards. So this is like their mock-up that they came to me, and it's like, oh, you have these things going on. You can't really see it there, but there's like this pattern. The color's kind of funky, and a lot of colors don't really match very well. But they thought it was exciting and snazzy, and get everyone excited about some research. So I'm like, okay. So my job was then to take this and actually lead a team to build an application to do this. And they were excited because you could like drill down and go into a graph, and you could click and move things around. So like familiar interface elements that we know today. But we actually had to build this all from scratch. We had to like write the code, and we had to like find toolkits to actually do bar charts and that kind of stuff. So really like 90% of the work was just like getting things to function. And then you could make up all the UI elements. It was like building a basic Tableau kind of game yourself. And so in that process, the developers were always, kind of focused on just like, how do we get this done? My focus was, okay, once we actually do it, and this is actually kind of the end product of that very first like visualization application. Not anything that's sexy by today's standards, but it was pretty slick, back then. We had to build it ourselves. I didn't get the blue fix, that still stuck. The client kind of put their foot down because that was like in the logo for the project or something like that. So they had to have that blue. But I spent a lot of time just working with the developers, not even like really focusing on making this good, because this is like, it kind of looks like Excel on a web browser. That's a 2009 web browser, so a lot of functionalities you have today. But I found myself having to explain to developers that surprisingly didn't actually learn anything about UI design. Why we need to have like a visual hierarchy, like your eye needs to land someplace to be able to navigate through. Why we have to have visual cues like carrots, those little triangles that you have to click on and open and close. Or just icons for like save, and how's that different than save as, and what if I want to export? All these things, when I was leading the development team, we'd end up with these mock-ups that were just like really not very usable. And I found myself explaining and really kind of walking them through and teaching about how to design and interface with people could. And so that, like my journey into data visualization was really out of necessity, having to lead the team through that and really kind of to teach them about what we were doing. Now the client also got a chance to like put their foot down and say this was really important to them. A funnel chart that's like totally awful, like this deserves to be on the screen and having 3 screen tabs. But here we get a picture. Yeah. So, and this is what they actually insisted on being in there. In fact, we had the whole thing together in like I don't remember, it was like a week or 2 weeks before like launch. They came and said, "We really need a funnel chart." We're like, "No, man, funnel. That's we had to recode the thing." But for obvious reasons, this is just really bad. First of all, the percentages don't even like match the size. It's really hard to tell what it is. It's just not good. So the client sometimes wins. They've won this battle, But this started me down the path of then starting to think about how to take these basic design principles that we should be following and actually teach our own internal teams about how to follow this, and like really educate them on how to make our craft and the art with our deliverables and our projects better. So then, major disruption of this. So that project launched. The client was super excited, and it was successful. So in spite of all the things we look at today, like, in terms of functionality, they loved it. They were ready to expand it to worldwide support. So this is a multinational company, and our local kind of division office of the client picked it up and wanted to take it worldwide. So I don't know if you've ever been in that situation, but when it gets elevated up to like the corporate CIO, who has his ideas about how we should do it, and probably his friends that own software development companies that do this, we get into like RFP, kind of competitive bidding process. So we're like, just like this is great. No, we have to go through all that. And I remember going through the conference call and are speaking with the gentleman whose job it was to decide this for the worldwide deployment. And he started asking me about the way that we were doing the charting and the graphs. And I explained, school kids who built this, it's UI, and so on. He said, have you ever thought about using kind of out-of-the-box, like pre-built tool sets, like Tableau? And that was the first time I heard that. And I said, no, we figured out, this seems to work here. A little bit younger in my career, and I should have, been a little bit more forward-thinking about overcoming objections like that, but a while ago. And I said, okay, fine. And we didn't end up getting the job. So that started me thinking, what are we talking about? What is Tableau and why should I care? Well, I can just tell you that being introduced to Tableau was one of the single most defining moments in terms of changing my career trajectory. There were those ones that you saw, like going from newspapers to television, advertising strategy. Those were all important pivot points. But for where I am today, bringing it all together, Tableau was the thing that really set me into a new direction. So I started to learn, to train up. I started to take what we had built internally and started to teach it. Got introduced to Jeff Schaefer, who's your colleague, my former colleague as well, working at the University of Cincinnati. We met through a mutual friend who said, UC, University of Cincinnati, is interested in creating a database class. Jeff, you do this. Eric, you do this. Would you like to get together and let's see if we can get this thing? And so that's where that all started. And he and I put the first class together. It didn't even have a real course name. It was like seminar and quantitative, some kind of crazy, we got an extra number left over in the course catalog. Because we're not really sure we want to commit to it yet, we're just going to try it. And that has turned into one of those popular courses, elective courses in the college business that you see at the graduate level. And so, we started going through cover, history, basic design principles, using Tableau, and so on. Take them through all the historical charts and the history and take people through the tools. That's really that process. If you've ever heard, if you have to teach something, it makes you really learn it. That's where I really learned how to stand up in front of a bunch of very smart master's level graduate students with another very smart person, Jeff, who really knows about Tableau and how to be able to hold with them and earn their respect and his respect in that process. So that's when things got a little more fun because then we were able to take prior client work and talk about why you shouldn't do this, and actually have not have to go to books and scrape the internet. Although Fox News photos or screen sharing are really great for that, typically. But actually, be able to turn this around and now start teaching about how to do it. Tableau conference, 2012, my first one. Introducing Tableau 8, so we were in Tableau 1.7 world now. They didn't call it data, hashtag data 19 is TCC 12 at that time. So I think much better change as they've evolved. It was also kind of cool because Malcolm Gladwell was there. I've heard a lot about him. Saw him on stage. So that was fun. Then I started writing. So one of the things I started doing in my company is actually research and comparative analyses between different tools, TIPCO, Spotfire, ClickView, Tableau, educate our customers, also continuing to educate myself. We had at that time, we were a Tableau reseller. So at one point, we were very early in, we were the largest Tableau reseller in Cincinnati, so I think we were like the one. But that's kind of a nice place of distinction at that time. And then I really went all in. Went public, got my license plate changed. Remember the night walking into class, I'm like, hey Jeff, come over here and look at my license.
By the way, I've seen the tattoo.
Still holding its shape too, so it's okay.
Sorry, this one's too good not to.
So when I got my license plate changed, we put that on the car, started driving around. So several people like, so I was the only person in Ohio that had that plate. So let me just tell you, if you do that and it's associated with your work, people will take pictures of your car, they will blog about you, they will post Twitter, they'll post about like, hey, it's on this car, here's it there. So it was fun, and I enjoyed it, and always good conversations, but just if you do that, just know that might happen. So if you're a shy person, you don't want people to know who you are, if you're like going too fast or kind of cut them off in traffic, and, this is not for you. But it was a good time. Also helped to start to rebuild the Tableau community in Cincinnati. Our TUG had kind of gone defunct, and so Jeff and Russell Spangler and a couple other folks who were in the city got together and tried to create that. And so, yeah, a lot of fun there. So you can see, like, you can imagine my schedule kind of like blowing up at this point. I like to say, like, when are you going to be home? In terms of like, how many days this month are you going to be home? With all the things going on. Also dabbled a little bit in Tableau Public. Did some fun stuff around social media listing, especially around Tableau Conference, to figure out, this was 2015, like when the most number of tweets were happening. So developers on stage beat out Neil deGrasse Tyson, which is pretty awesome. Tells you a little bit about all of Neil deGrasse Tyson. Tells you a little bit about the passion of this community. And then kept going, had public appearances, been interviewed on the radio several times, got involved with a data chain project, which was kind of like your data 2, you guys know what those are. The postcard exchanges that have happened. Aaron, this one was for you. You were the recipient of this one. The idea was like take an idea, do it on a paper postcard, and then mail it to somebody, and you did kind of like a pen pal exchange. That was a lot of fun. A lot of late nights. Can't see here, but there's probably like a glass of wine over there in the corner, and I'm there like, oh, I have to get up in the morning, but I stayed up late to do this because I wanted to get it done. Then the real test came when I had to present in front of Christian and Chris. So Christian, former CEO of Tableau, and Chris Sulte, they were the founders, original founders of the company. They came to our Cincy TUG, and I was prepping my Tableau conference presentation, and they showed up. So it was like great, but also scared me to death. So luckily that went okay. They did not rescind my invitation, which was good. So I think that was a good sign. And then spent much of 2016 and then 2017 kind of out on the road. So there's the Tableau conference, and then 2017 was like this year of just public presentations to all over the place, both in Cincinnati, going down to Wake Forest. Yeah, Wake Forest grad over there. Were you in that lecture that I did at Wake Forest at that time? You were at that one. Okay, right. Yeah. And then and several different places, Ohio University, and then I was honored for Tableau to send me as their representative to the Informatica conference conference in San Francisco just to speak about how we use Tableau and Informatica together. Just a lot of fun, and then of course, another Tableau conference. 2018 was a big change because previously a lot of the public speaking stuff had to do with the work I was doing at the Scripps company. At that time, I was vice president of analytics and intelligence. And really speaking on the topic of how, as a media organization, you could use data to be better custodians of the public trust as journalists and to make a positive impact on the community. I left Scripps at the end of 2017 and joined Comcast in 2018. So much different role, much different public profile, really kind of toning that down. And honestly, I've really been focused on building a team there and getting my family to Philadelphia. We're all finally going to be there. We've been living in Cincinnati, Philadelphia. So that's been, you know, the big focus here. But a big change for me. Still trying to be somewhat out there, be an advocate for Tableau, and doing some teaching on the side. So when I look at all that, that's kind of a long story of how I got to answer that question. When I look at it, a couple themes emerge. I just kind of look at, you know, the beginning, which is around trying to build better UIs and taking that through, you know, the disruption that Tableau caused in my book of business, which motivated me to learn and to really kind of take that on as a personal challenge. Working through the community, finding like-minded advocates, actually creating jobs by building teams and building capabilities in my company, helping to form a new generation of visualization experts with Jeff and like-minded advocates as well. But then what you have seen recently is this pivot to business problems, not so much on design problems. Thinking about how can I be an evangelist for the role of analytics and, of course, data visualization. Part of that. It's not the core part. I mean, it's the core part of doing the work. That's not the story. It's really about the questions we're trying to answer. And now really spending most of my time on strategic questions for the business. So trying to think about how to figure out what that means and tie that into the question of where I'm going. This is kind of how I just sketched out kind of my levels of engagement and kind of where they went along. Really started with learning Tableau, then teaching, and becoming involved with the community, and that's kind of like level of effort kind of gone down. A little bump there in public advocacy with prior role, and really spending most of my time on strategy now. So this is the part that now becomes kind of like, all of that was, I can't tell, I really love the work that I do and enjoy my job. But now it's kind of like realizing that things have changed. And this is what I wanted to kind of talk about with you, have a conversation about. It's that, in my view, Tableau and the Tableau community are inextricably, at least the culture we built today, and that's fantastic. That's actually, of all the pieces of software, Tableau software that I've ever used, it's the only one that has the kind of level of advocacy that can get all of you here tonight, especially when you're just beginning, or still coming after 10 years, and building a big part of your career on. Huge power and really, I think, the brilliance behind what they've been able to do with that company. Whether it's through, software training, or the conference, or the public platform, user groups, and then the education and teaching that happens. A lot of times from community members themselves, not just experts, but just the people coming together and saying, I'm going to help you solve that problem. I'm going to share. I'm going to create a blog and talk about it. So my question is, and the question I'm asking myself, and I want to engage you in the dialogue, is what happens when we graduate to a different career context? So that journey for me took about 10 years. And I still use Tableau, it's still open Tableau, but I'm not in Tableau all the time. So I think that this is, kind of a question that I'm looking for an answer to, and I don't think I'm the only one. You think about, just like imagine How many people are tablet commerce last year? 17,000, something like that. I'm sure it'd be like 32 this year. Or something like that. We're back in Las Vegas. We think like 10% of those folks, let's say they get promoted every year. And then after 2 promotions, they're probably more of a management tools, not necessarily the tools. So maybe a 3rd promotion, and now they're really like department manager or even higher potentially. The further they go down that path, the further they kind of pull the tool and doing that work. And if that happens, then potentially they pull it. So I don't think that's the answer. I think that probably the first generations of folks are going through that transition. And so I thought, well, okay, let's put that out there on the internet and let's find out what people think. So I just posted this, I guess at the beginning of the month here. How many people posted? You can have Twitter, it's like 15 minutes later. I wanted to reactivate that and engage you in this discussion both here. I know some people are extroverted and are happy to talk about that and share ideas and wonder with me. Other people would prefer just to kind of talk about it and maybe post online. But here are the questions I have, and this is part of the last part of this. I just wanted to engage in dialogue. How can we find like folks that are kind of at that, or maybe on the other end of that, you're looking for someone that's had kind of the experience that I've had or the journey that I've had. How do we find each other? That's one question. Probably, obviously, we're finding each other here tonight. So that's one way. But are there others? Is there a natural community, or is there a new community? How can, this is what in my self-reflection, how can I now, as a business executive, continue to advocate for best practices around design? I need a team. Of course, I'm going in there and giving them guidance, like, no, don't do that, but do or edit or whatever. So let's think about simplifying. But what is the best way to do that with the knowledge that we have, but then also, frankly, the ability for some of us to influence or have a platform. How can we support those who are best started? If you were going to, have the chance for us to talk, like what is the question you would ask me? How can I help you? And then, what does the data fan, this broader family of Tableau users and advocates need to offer? So these are the things that I'm asking myself. And I wanted to ask you the same questions, because this is really for me in my career, when I go, my work at Comcast and wherever I go there, like, I'm crystal clear on exactly where that's going to be going over the next couple of years. At least to the best that I can. I have a vision for myself. What I don't want to do is I don't want to lose connection with this community and all the great energy that's here. Again, it's my turn to give, I think, really continue to get back to that. So I just wanted to open it to the floor and get your thoughts. Yeah.
So one idea that just popped in my head was, asking people who their mentor was when they first started out, tagging them in the posts, bringing them back into, the community, and then kind of what was the first aha moment that really got you to be from, beginner level to graduating further past that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So engaging on social to do that, and to just like really surface those experiences.
MentorMeetup.com.
Do what?
MentorMeetup.com.
Mentor Meetup.
Yes, that's where you can find others that have graduated. And things that there are avenues that we are promoting within the talent community. So,
Yeah. What other ideas? Are we here? Maybe you want to ask me a question.
Question for you. Yeah. Have you started writing your book yet?
Oh.
Yeah.
I need to get moved. I need to get the family to Philadelphia, and then maybe I can. I appreciate the suggestion.
had a question. As you went from each sort of stage in your career, was the next step something that you actively sought out to do, or did people sort of approach you from the outside and say, hey, we saw you do such and such, we think you'd be great to do this? Like, how much was it self-directed versus, or proactive versus more reactive? And do you prefer one way or the other, if both have?
That's a great question. So I'm going to think about kind of all of those pivots. I think in my experience, and just kind of the way I've, kind of shepherded my own development, like I tend to be drawn to things. So, like photography, in the beginning was something I was just drawn to. Like I wanted to do that. I was excited about that. I didn't know why. I didn't think I was actually going to be a photographer again. I just was interested in it, so that kind of pulled me in. The whole thing about going to television, the part of the backstory I didn't tell you, is that I actually thought I was going to go to OU and get a photo program, but they wanted me to start over after at the beginning, like photo 101, like this is how you develop film. And I had been working as a professional photographer for several years at that point. I'm like, I don't need to do that. Like, I'm going to. So it was like kind of like self-advocacy for myself. I'm better than that. It's not like ego thing. It's like I'm not going back to that. Like, I need something different. And that kind of pivoted into television. Now, getting together with Jeff, to teach that class, someone connected us. I would, I owe Jeff is a great friend, and I just, one of the best friends I think that I have, and I think that his, first of all, willingness to be open to our collaboration, but then like what we added to each other in that work was pivotal. And that happened because someone saw potential and said, it might have also been serving a need that they had to try to help out the school, but to put us together and to this could be something. So it's been a blend of both. What I would say is that the continuity or the key kind of like similar in all those was just being open to the opportunity. And life is complicated, and sometimes it's hard to tell what to do. But I think in all those pivots, that's the one thing that is the same.
Yeah. It's kind of like different approaches to teaching at a level of like college courses versus teaching, say, within a corporation or fostering a community of practice. You have like different approaches to how you teach, what you say, and
it's kind of interesting because when you're in college, like your students are there and they've signed up for it and they're paying. So in some ways, like they're really motivated because you're going to give them a grade. Like they're there to learn that for the purpose. So in some ways, you can actually have it be more stretching in terms of their development. It can move faster. I think the challenge in the more corporate environment, and I'm not speaking in a paid corporate environment because I don't have that experience. I've done some of that, but I can't speak with authority on it. But from an internal, like, hey, let's get everyone together, let's have a Tableau day. We're going to teach like, the real challenge in life, I think some of the professors are saying, like, you want to move your hand over to the mouse, is getting people to really engage in that, especially when it's not their full time. So I think that the question is how to motivate, and I think the key is finding people who are drawn to it already, if you can. And you have a class, if you lead a class, you might have 30 in there. Finding the 2 or 3 folks that are figuring out how to get them, get them into the group and empower them. Okay.
I didn't touch anything.
Well, here's what I would say. Thanks for letting me take you down this walk through my timeline and for sharing your ideas with me. I would invite you, again, because this is I'm spending a lot of time thinking about this, and I think, I'm sure, just like the teacher would have said, like, you have a question, like, I'm sure I can help it. So what I'm trying to do is like, think about this, think about how to kind of create these new spaces or link things and connections, and help others do the same thing. So if you have ideas about that, want to talk, separately or online, you like go to my Twitter account, and it's just Eric Duel at in front of it, and reply or DM me, and we can.
Alright, so before we leave, we're going to have Valentina come up. She's from Excella, and they were nice enough to provide us this space and food.
I just wanted to say thank you everyone for coming out on this Wednesday and spending the time.